Good morning to everyone. I am Dr. Nilanjan Chakraborty, and I plan to present uh, a little short speech on Yeats's poem, The Second Coming. And I have chosen this poem because this poem is in the syllabus of most universities and colleges across India. So therefore, I plan to talk just a little bit about Yeats's The Second Coming. Now, we all know that W.B. Yeats was writing at a time when the movement of modernism was sweeping across Western Europe. And we know that modernism is a specific cultural, artistic, and aesthetic movement that swept across Europe in the early 20th century. And modernism was basically a movement that was that came into existence because of the Industrial Revolution during the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution had caused a tremendous sense of social and economic displacement among the people, which ultimately resulted in the cryptic cynicism that we have in most of the artistic works of modernism. Modernism was also ushered in by the crisis of the war, and as a result of the war, the Christian identity of Europe, the very basis of the Christian faith in Europe, was under question because of the massive destruction and massive bloodshed all around. And as a result, what we see in modernism is not only a sense of cynicism towards faith, towards form, towards organization, but what we also see is, in modernism, a sense of cynicism towards the form of art itself. That's why most of the modernist arts, like Surrealism, Dadaism, Impressionism, New Impressionism, all these movements in painting experimented with the form of art and painting itself. In modernist discourse, in poetry, what we see is that poets like Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, a bit later on W.H. Auden, and of course W.B. Yeats, they are all experimenting with the forms of poetry, and we call that the avant-garde movement. What Ezra Pound would say, make it new. So therefore, they were all trying to make the discourse of poetry, they were all trying to make the discourse of literature new. They were trying to experiment with the forms and content of art and poetry in order to respond to the fragmentation and the violence which were sweeping across Europe at that point of time. Now, we know that critics like John Drakakis and Peter Childs, they have said that modernism cannot be only one movement because there are many modernisms. So therefore, Yeats's modernism is definitely different to what Eliot would understand modernism as. So Yeats, as we know, was an Irish nationalist. He was born in 1865 and he died in 1939. So his time frame is very important, moving from the mid-Victorian period to the start of the Second World War, that is Hitler's invasion of Poland in 1939. So therefore, Yeats's politics is to not only experiment with his poetic form, but also to create a mythical world that will respond to the Irish culture, that will respond to the Irish past, the Celtic and the Gaelic past of Ireland. And Yeats's politics was to bring out this mythical practice in poetry and expound that through his poetry so that the mythical past of Ireland can be portrayed. Now we know that in a particular essay that was written by T.S. Eliot in the magazine called The Dial, and Eliot over there was talking about the mythical method that James Joyce had used in his novel Ulysses, and Yeats was saying, and T.S. Eliot was saying that the mythical method used by Joyce was basically to find to find an answer to the vast fragmentation of the modern times. So therefore, the mythical method is to find the organic unity in the myths, which is there in the ancient wisdom of European classical culture. Now, Yeats's poem, The Second Coming, the very title of the poem is very important because the Second Coming refers to the Second Coming of Christ. But here what we see is that the poem begins with the very important image, the very important metaphor of the gyre. Now, in the book called A Vision, Yeats had said that gyres are basically vortexes. They are kind of conical spiral shapes, which is basically a metaphor of how one phase of history is in contradiction with the next phase of history. And these gyres represent the historical movement as beyond the control of human imagination and beyond the control of human perception. So, what Yeats is trying to say in this poem is that one phase of history is about to come to an end. Which phase of history? The Christian phase of European history. That is coming to an end in the 20th century because the common belief is that one phase of history is there for 2000 years. So, this gyre image talks about the tremendous movement of historical time and space, which is beyond the human control, which is beyond the human understanding. And that is why the falconer and the falcon, both of them are locked in a relationship where they are not being able to control each other. And that's why things fall apart and the center cannot hold. So the center is the center of order, which cannot hold anymore because the falcon and because the falcon and the falconer are caught up in that gyre. They are caught up in that vortex of historical time and space, for which they are not able to control each other. Now, so as Yeats says in the poem, that the ceremony of innocence is drowned. So therefore, the very innocence of the Christian epoch, the very innocence of the Christian faith is now drowning within the vortex of violence, fragmentation, and the total loss of faith. And that is why the best lack the conviction. So the intellectual space, the spiritual space of Europe is dying, and the worst are now full of passion, but the best are now lacking in conviction. So the second part of the poem is a bit ironic, talking about the cryptic cynicism that Yeats has about the oncoming of the next epoch of history. As he says that surely some revelation is at hand, which is an ironic statement because it seems that what Yeats is trying to say is that the revelation is actually not coming, because the birth of the new epoch is in parallel to the birth of the vast image of the Spiritus Mundi. The Spiritus Mundi is Yeats's parallel to the Jungian collective unconscious. And the Spiritus Mundi is basically a kind of a world spirit, a kind of a muse, which not only encourages a poet, but the Spiritus Mundi also has in it the collective image of the Irish civilization, of the Irish past. Now, this Spiritus Mundi is troubling the sight of the poet because there is the birth of the Sphinx, a Sphinx-like beast, which has the face of a lion and the body of a man. But the point is that this beast is moving across the desert. The desert is the metaphor. If I may use T.S. Eliot, it is the objective correlative of the vast faithlessness, of the vast spiritual dryness of the modern European wasteland of the 20th century. Across this desert, this beast is moving and slouching towards Bethlehem, which is very, very interesting and very, very ironic. So, the beastly ontology of the modern man is reflected in this particular image, because this beastly image anticipates the nightmare of the birth of a new epoch, where the revelation is not coming, because this new epoch is caught up in the world of darkness, in the world of faithlessness. And the beast has no empathy at all. It is ready to kill in the sands of the desert. So therefore, it is ready to kill man, it is ready to kill civilization, it is ready to kill every human perception, and then it is slouching towards Bethlehem. Maybe there is a subterranean note of beastly sexuality in the world, in the word slouching, or in the image of the empty of the nude thigh. But the point is that this beast is slouching towards Bethlehem, which means that, there are two ways of reading this. If the beast is moving towards Bethlehem, is the beast taking over Bethlehem? If the beast is taking over Bethlehem, then it means that the very hallowed grounds of the Christian spirit is taken over by this nightmarish image of the beast. The other way of looking at it is this, that if the beast is slouching towards Bethlehem, then it means that there is very little space of faith left, because the beast is slouching towards Bethlehem like an animal. So therefore, the very spiritual faith of Christianity is actually shifting to a sense of spiritual nightmare, as the beast is trying to take over Bethlehem. And therefore, as a result, the very European sense of Christian faith is shifting towards a space of nightmarish, beastly death. A vision of apocalypse is coming. Thank you very much.